Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Embodied by Mac. My name is Makayla, and today we are going to talk about Uranus transits through the 12 houses. If you haven't seen the first video I put out on Uranus transits, how they feel and how they are embodied from this evolutionary approach, I'm really focusing on the psychological and emotional effects of these transits through the houses, although I will give you the practical realities of what shows up. Definitely watch that video first because it's going to give you a deep dive into what you can expect. And now I'll break it down through the houses, right? But they really go hand in hand. And that first video can apply to everybody. With this video, I'm going to go through all 12 houses. So you can either just find the timestamp down below that I will put in for the house that you want to watch. We do have this planet Uranus changing sign on April 25th. It moves into Gemini. So I would encourage you to watch for the Uranus transit through the Taurus section of your chart, and then also watch for it moving into Gemini, right? Which houses is it? What house was it last in for the last 7 years, and what house is it moving into for the next 7 years? Couple of announcements real quick. I have a daily horoscope, audio horoscope on Patreon. I am offering a free trial to new subscribers. You can find that link down below. And I am launching my first spiritual coaching course within the next few weeks. So if you want to be on the list for when that comes out, join my newsletter and you will be the first to know when this course is launched. And I will also give you a freebie that goes along with that and a discount code off of the course. I made $250,000 last year, and a lot of this was because of my spiritual coaching training that I had, and my teacher passed away last January. And I decided that I would recreate some of those teachings from, of course, his foundation, but also with my skills as well. And I feel very good, very powerful about this offering that I'm about to bring to other people. It is aside from astrology, this is from a spiritual coaching lens where I'm going to connect you to your body so that you know how to make decisions and navigate life from a very intuitive, unwavering self-knowledge type of place, right? And I think this is applicable to anybody, whether you're a business owner or you're a parent, you're moving, like whatever your endeavor is, you can apply this spiritual foundation to everything in your life. And it was completely life-changing for me. I actually took this course back in from him 2021. So, and I've had leaps and bounds since I implemented that into my life. So anyway, I'll have more information for that at the end of the video. Just wanted to make those two announcements. So let me pull up my notes. Okay. So Uranus transits, right? Real quick. Uranus transits on a big scale, again, watch the first video, are going to ask you if you're free. And it's going to ask you, in what ways are you free? And then if you don't feel free in the house that it's transiting in, it's going to ask you, how long can you suffer to not feel free, right? How long can you how long can you stay in this stagnation, or what will feel like stagnation or boredom or frustration, resistance? Often, the area of life that Uranus is transiting asks and requires some sort of upgrade, and that means change. Right. This is also why my course that I'm launching is extremely important because it helps people create the change that is necessary in their lives. So Uranus is going to come in and ask for you to make a change. And if you don't, well, you'll feel it. You'll feel boredom, you'll feel resistance, you'll feel irritation. And you'll feel like anxiety and pressure and restlessness. This undercurrent here will build and build and build and build until a circumstance outside of life will come to you, right? Transits happen, astrology knowledge, right? Transits show up as other people, places, and circumstances. Of course, if you want to get really deep, this is going to be in correlation to your natal Uranus placement, right? The transiting planet is always helping the evolutionary purpose and journey of the natal placement of that planet. If you want to work with an astrologer, I am available and open for readings. We can get real specific on your chart. But I hope that you can use this video and apply themes into your life. So, if Uranus is crossing the ascendant and moving into your first house, this is one of those big deals because this is one of the pillars of life, right? The ascendant is a part of your identity, how your appearance is, and the overall instinctual response that you have to life and have to the world. A lot of your impulsive desires, a lot of your instinctual responses to make choices and decisions and lead in a direction in your life is coming in under the umbrella of the first house, the ascendant. So when Uranus crosses the first house and the ascendant, this means that there is a major reinvention of the self that is being asked. So the individual might begin to feel actually physically trapped in some sense with their physical body and be called to make actual changes in their physical body, right? This can be related to your self-expression or the way you dress or the way you color your hair, changes in your weight. Maybe all of a sudden you want to begin bodybuilding. Maybe all of a sudden you were a bodybuilder and you're just like a runner or a total yogi, and there's a major reinvention of the self, but it is often an erratic and impulsive pull towards a change. And the more that the individual, if the individual resists this calling for this physical change, the more trapped they will actually physically feel in their life and could manifest as kind of events outside of the self that causes the person to make the change no matter what, right? Say the person you know doesn't is just not a mover at all, right? They don't work out. They may start to actually physically manifest ailments inside of their body that causes them to have to get up and walk, to have to get up and move. They can't ignore it anymore because the physical change will become so trapping for them, causing issues and problems for them. The other thing that might happen is new ideas. They might get the sudden impulse of new ideas and new directions in life, right? This first house, the ascendant, really shifts the entire trajectory of your life. So they might feel these just impulsive in like need to just go in a new direction, and it could also affect their relationships with other people. So they might decide that they all of a sudden want to start burning bridges with other people, right? They might feel like this electric, very dramatic change about them, about their identity, about how they present themselves, how they physically want to present themselves, right? They just might want to change so much that they're not even reliable to other people, right? For whatever reason. And other people are like, wow, you're changing really dramatically and drastically. But here, the impulse is to be more free. So it might be in the best interest of that human to be doing that because they're freeing themselves up for whatever reason, right? Maybe they overcommitted to people in the past, or maybe they were overly, codependent on other people in the past, or they gave their time and they never got to move or make choices freely in their own life. And then Uranus crosses the ascendant and they're like, hey, Uranus is like, you can't show up for everybody else anymore. It's a time to show up for the direction of your life. And every time you try to show up for somebody else, Uranus hits you with an unexpected event that forces you to focus on you, right? So you might want to free yourself up from responsibilities and other people's expectations, right? Uranus moving, I do want to say too, because it's in my notes, that they might not seem reliable to other people, but there's a need to cut out the noise with Uranus transits. So while they're doing that, they're actually coming up with solutions for themselves that are helping liberate their own personal life. So then later on down the line, they actually can be that reliable person again. But for whatever reason, there's been a stagnation that comes up into this point, and the direction of their life needs to be solely an independent journey, right? There's this need to spend time alone with Uranus transits. And so Uranus transiting the first house would require the person to spend a little bit more time alone as well, like hence the burning the bridges, right? People are used to you always being around, and then all of a sudden you can't be for whatever reason. Uranus going into the second house. This is, the house of the general sense, your money and your resources and what you can provide yourself for survival and security and your self-sustainability. So there will be changes that arise within the individual on how they feel when it comes to their own self-sustainability. So they might have fluctuations with money coming in, money coming out for whatever reason, and have to navigate this instability for a few years because there's a deeper teaching here with Uranus where it's asking the person to focus on, what is really worth pursuing when it comes to money and resources. On the deeper level, there's a pattern breaking of what's of value to that person. And that's going to relate to how they feel about money. So all of a sudden, maybe that person loved money and then all of a sudden has a shift and just does not care for it at all, doesn't care about earning it and wants to change their life that used to revolve around money. They might not. Maybe that person never cared about money and then all of a sudden has a goal of becoming a millionaire, right? So their values are changing. The individual have a lot of lessons around physical energy exchange as well. So what is worth time and what is of value and worth money? There will be a new invention around your sense of time and what that is worth. What's worth pursuing? Is this worth my time? Putting energy and effort into this, right? There's also an effect of an upgrade of skills. So because your talents and your skills can fall under this house placement, and that can become of what, like a mental and emotional possession, but then also usually becomes a material thing, right? The person puts that into a material type of embodiment where their talent and their skill becomes a resource that they use to earn assets, earn wealth, earn money. So there can be an upgrade here, right? Or shifts around here, all of a sudden gaining new talent or skills, or finding out that you're really talented at something and you change your life because that's what you want to put your actual energy into at this point, right? And this is about becoming more authentic with how you feel about your time and your money and your resources. But there will be at times the person might come into a large amount of money and then realize it's not valuable for them and then give it away or lose it or whatnot, right? Or in the beginning earn a massive amount of money doing one thing that was of value to them. And then later on down the line in the transit, realize, hey, this actually isn't worth my time anymore. Get rid of all that money and then accumulate it again through a different way of utilizing their time. Uranus going through the third house is heavily focused on your mind and your ability to communicate your ideas. So this can correlate to somebody having an impulse and suddenly needing to express themselves in a more authentic way. And these ideas that they have could be like seem impulsive to other people, or it could seem rebellious or unconventional. And so for a little bit of time, that person might feel alienated, like people don't understand them on that intellectual level, right? And there's a need for this person to become more authentic with opening up their mind and being able to express themselves, verbally communicate themselves, their ideas and their opinions, and then align with people who could at least receive that or open that up, right? There's this energy of opening up the mind too, where all of a sudden that person might feel like they want to digest new information, learn something new, and their perception of how they see reality through information could dramatically shift, right? This is heavily dependent on the communication story here. They might, these individuals might all of a sudden have these crazy, amazing new ideas, and they seem really impulsive and really eccentric to other people, like different. But they might feel this need to free themselves through expressing. Maybe there's been a truth that they've been holding on to, that they've had fear of expressing or sharing for a very long time. And then the freedom, right? It like the lack of the freedom, it gets so stagnant, it gets so stale within their energy field that they just have to break out and tell their story or share their ideas or learn to speak in new ways or learn to communicate in new ways so that they can free their mind up and free their voice up. Or maybe they decide to write a book that is completely shocking, a different perspective. You know, their perspective of how if you have this going through, if your perspective of information, of ideas could completely change, radically change, right? But there's this need to understand that there might be a cost at expressing yourself and your truth, but doing it anyway to free yourself up, right? And the cutting out of the noise comes from you learning to cut the noise out of other people's perspectives of what your truth is. And by doing this, by liberating yourself from the fear of speaking up, the fear of expressing yourself, you allow that freedom of that communication to be more open, to flow more in, right? And then other people who will align with you will naturally gravitate towards that upgrade of you once you're able to communicate your ideas, perspectives, and your own personal truths. It's definitely about trusting your authentic self and your authentic opinions, and also knowing that new inventions might come out of that as well. You might have these radical, crazy ideas that are just brilliant. They're brilliant, and other people won't get it. But it's about cutting out the noise, because the Uranus transit through the third house or in Gemini, which we will experience, it will bring in radical new ideas, genius ideas, brilliance. It'll seem like it came out of nowhere, right? And it's about trusting your authentic self that needs to be expressed. Uranus transiting the fourth house is one of those big ones again because it is the IC, so it's at the bottom of the chart and it's one of the four main pillars. Now, all of these transits are important, right? But when we tend to have a planet that crosses one of the angles, it's a little bit more loud because it represents one of these major pillars in life. So transits going over the bottom of the chart, the IC, Uranus coming in here, it's a radical change and a freeing up on an internal process, an internal journey. So the real self and the personal self from the evolutionary perspective and taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green is the fourth house, right? This is who we are when we're at home alone and not around anybody else. This is who we feel our personal identity is. I'm sorry, guys, if you can hear my dog like coughing in the background. Um, I think the audio is pretty good. So this individual who's getting this, you might have this sudden radical change of who you are on that internal level, right? Um, but this is often rooted in changes to the home and the family life. So you yourself could feel different inside, and so you want to leave your family, just one scenario. You might have been straight your whole life, and then all of a sudden you're identifying as, bisexual or gay. And, so there's an uprooting here. There's an uprooting with the foundation of yourself, which will correlate to the home life as well. There might be people moving in and out of your home during this time, during this transit, right? For whatever reason. A lot of changes inside of the home. You might decide that, you're going to sell your house. You might decide that you want to live in a camper van, for instance, and especially with Uranus, it's erratic. It's not really consistent. You might decide that you want to bounce around to many places, right? You might decide you want to buy, maybe you have the wealth to do it. You might decide you want to buy a bunch of houses in a bunch of different places, right? You don't have to be in this camper van thing. Maybe you have a house in Costa Rica, you have a house in Italy, and you have a house in Hawaii, and you have a house in Japan, and you're just for the next 7 years, you're bouncing around. This can also correlate to you wanting to suddenly be more authentic and tell a certain truth with the family and the home dynamic. Maybe family secrets come up over this transit, or your secrets come out to the family, right? But there's also a need to, there could be lineage things that you didn't know about, like somebody was adopted down the line. There could be information that comes out that uproots you, right? On a psychological, it doesn't have to be just physical within the home, but it could be emotional uprooting when it comes to the home and your foundation, or a psychological kind of thing, right? Maybe you find out some crazy things about the family lineage. Information comes in, right? It is beneficial if you have Uranus transiting the fourth house to take time to spend time alone to regroup. And often the individual will need that, right? They'll need to find new ways that they can nurture themselves when Uranus is moving through the fourth house, just because it's affecting the root and that foundation and the psychological connection to that person, the emotional connection to that person. But overall, this is about becoming more authentic with where you can feel rooted in, so that this foundation does become more stable when this transit moves on, right? There's some radical change here that is linked to that. This also could bring radical changes to the parent that was the most nurturing, or the mother archetype. Depends what's on your natal house placement in the fourth house, what's on the cusp and so forth. But there could be sudden shifts, maybe that's healing, you know, or maybe you all of a sudden get a new mother-in-law, for instance, right? You get divorced and you're married, and there's a new mother-in-law, maybe there's a new relationship with a mother figure of some sort, something connected to changes and shifts, and the need to be more free within the home life, okay, within the family system, and where you can feel rooted. But for a little while, not the whole entire transit, but for a little while, the individual often feels some kind of uprootedness for a little bit until that freedom, that sense of personal freedom can be met for that individual, or personal authenticity, at least within the family system or home system. Uranus moving into the fifth house. Mostly, this affects the individual to be able to creatively express themselves. So they might have been an individual who always knew they had a talent, but never embarked on that talent, right? Say they loved singing and never pursued it, never felt like they could pursue it. And all of a sudden they start to showcase themselves, apply, try out, audition for local plays, and they start doing local musicals and they start being seen more. But at first there's that fear, that's an insecurity, but there's this pull, like there could be this pull that this person has this special gift or this talent or this thing that they've always wanted to pursue or express themselves in, and it becomes too suppressed and too painful to not free themselves enough to showcase that, right? To liberate themselves, their creativity, their personal sense of creativity. It can become too painful to harbor it any longer. So there's this development for the individual, for their ego in a healthy way, to be liberated now, right? To take up some time, some space in their life. So the way that somebody expresses themselves, self-expression, painting, art, dance, hobbies, could be podcasting, right? Whatever that is, that can change. Whether they're showing up, maybe they're quitting, maybe they're pivoting, maybe they decide to go in a completely new way. Because Uranus can be these radical changes, right? Maybe they are waking up a new form of creativity and giving up another one, right? But the individual might also experience a lot of need to be able to express themselves despite and cut out the noise of other people's opinions, because opinions can fall into the fifth house. A lot of people will have an opinion around your performance or how you're showing up, right? And it's really not about their opinion. It's about your personal sense of joy and creativity and being able to feel like you can embody that fully. And Uranus coming into the fifth house here will ask you to basically give birth to and rise to this ego development, right? It Uranus here will teach you that it's okay for that part of your ego to take up space. And so your sense of play in improvising and your free will and your ability to playfully create and so forth takes on a new importance in the life with Uranus coming to the fifth, right? Like feeling like you finally have the courage to finally do the thing. This also could bring in changes with children into your life. On the positive side, you could have been wanting children and told that you couldn't, and then all of a sudden unexpectedly get pregnant. You could have changes in with children. Children could be leaving your home. This could be the year where you become the empty nester, which then now you're given more freedom to do something for your own personal creativity rather than worrying about what your children are always doing 24/7. Uh, Different relationships could come in and out. This is kind of where we experience the dating realm. So if you're single or getting divorced or what have you, maybe you're experiencing a new form of intimacy in your relationship. This will be eighth house more so, but it could bleed into the fifth. Children could be coming and going, right? Say you're dating people with children, the relationship doesn't work out. You're dating another person with children, and so forth, right? There could be a theme here with that. But mostly this, I find this usually is associated with a person's need to individuate themselves on a very personal, creative, self-expressive type of level. And it can become too painful to not do it, to not share your opinion, to not perform your talent, do your gift, start the podcast, paint the project, perform the role, whatever that is, right? Uranus going into the sixth house. This is one of those houses that will be linked to our daily habits and our daily rituals. So, and it is also linked to a portion of our work, right? More of our vocation and us working for other people sometimes, depending on the placement. I have Sun in the sixth house, so I have to work for myself, but um you could become really more clear about your health with Uranus moving through the sixth house because little changes are going to make big improvements or not improvements in your health when Uranus is in the sixth. So it will be a fine tuning of your diet and your body's health, like the products that you use, right? The lotions that you use, the makeup you put on, the water, the type of water that you're drinking, the quality of air that you have, all of these little routines and these rituals will are going to tell you how things are or are not working. And there'll be a requirement for you to focus on that with Uranus moving to the sixth house, right? So there'll be insights around your personal health and these day-to-day things that you do, eat, digest, or sleep. And Uranus will come in and help you with the innovation portion of that, of what is or is not working, right? And your rituals or health insights that you gain might be radically different from other people. The first thing that's coming to my mind that they're telling me to say is like Dr. Joe Dispenza, right? He healed himself radically through the power of his subconscious mind. This would be Uranus through the sixth. So many people like, you are crazy, and you'd be like, watch me, right? And you will improve the way that your mind works also. Your mind can become very sharp with Uranus moving through the sixth house. And in return, because you become so focused on your health and also on your daily rituals, this also becomes involved in your daily skills and your tasks that you are learning to become better at. And you become really confident during the course of this transit that your abilities to do these things on a very fine-tuned level are massive. So it's all these little small changes that actually have these radical, massive changes in the course of this transit for you. The minor changes will bring big progress. In the beginning, as well as how things that arise, another thing that can arise is how you're showing up with work. You might want a different role. You might try out different roles, different types of jobs. When I had Uranus moving through the sixth, I had I had a lot of jobs. Um, And I didn't stick with them very long, you know? But it's like you're trying out these things, right? You're trying out and you're seeing what you're good at, you'll probably become very good, honestly. Uranus will make you very good at many little skills and things, but it's up to you what you'll feel free doing and what you won't, and begin to throw off the things that you don't want to do every day, right? You also might, if you work with other people and you work under other people, you might all of a sudden not feel like you fit in with that culture, right? Or you might not fit in with the role that you're doing. And so you might change your job because of that, right? Or your health might ask you to change, right? You might require, say this job has been draining you and you've got no sleep for years, and then all of a sudden Uranus moves into your sixth house and it's say, we can't ignore anymore that you can't get any sleep. Maybe you're having all these issues because of lack of sleep. Now Uranus is saying, hey, we're going to change the job, which is going to force you to change patterns in your health, but it's going to exponentially lead to something that's more liberating on the other side, right? Things I want you to keep in mind with Uranus transits, and this will go for all the houses, is that it's bringing you an upgrade at the end of the day. It's bringing you an upgrade. Something has been too comfortable, and although comfort is great, it doesn't allow growth. And so that area where we feel that frustration and stagnation and boredom or lack of inspiration, right, or impatience with other people, that's where Uranus is going to come in and give us the upgrade, right? So you might be very impatient with other people that you work with Uranus in the sixth, or you might be very impatient with certain health things, certain doctors, and you might choose to change it. You know, you might go into a completely holistic approach. You could get maybe off of medications that you had been on for a long time. You know, these are major things. They seem minor at times, but they lead to major leaps and bounds in your overall trajectory of your life. Let me take a quick sip of my coffee. Okay. Uranus crossing the seventh house. That's a big one too. That's one of the angles of the chart. And there will be a lot of fluctuations within the relationships in your life. So it is personal relationships, like your romantic, your partner, maybe your marriage spousal or your fiance or your long-term boyfriend or girlfriend. It's also, you know, your friendships, your open enemies, and also people that you're in business with that you have, you know, contracts with and so forth. But Uranus here transiting is going to bring changes to your relationships because the way that you are relating to people change. So it is sometimes likely that the individual experiences things like, you know, betrayal and changes in relationships and partners suddenly leaving, or you suddenly leaving a partner for whatever reason. Again, it doesn't have to be, you know, just your significant other, it could be any of these other ones. But it's because the way that you're relating and the terms on which you were relating to people begin to upgrade. They begin to need to upgrade and change, right? So this is about really getting a good look at how these relationships were created and started, and at what value systems were they created and started, and are they equal? Are they still equal? Do you still both have freedom to be yourselves, right? Or is there a stagnation or a stuckness, or is there, you know, some type of suppression happening within those dynamics? And what is the cost of that now for your personal freedom in relationships? And often if people are in relationship patterns that are costing them something, that it's their own personal sense of inner security and freedom, then that's when that Uranus transit shows up as instability in the relationship, right? Because it's costing the individual something within themselves that is blocking them to be completely their authentic self. And so it's making the person look like, what are the terms of this relationship, right? A big portion of Uranus transiting the seventh house is learning to say no to people, which can be hard. Maybe you're somebody who always wanted to keep the peace, um, maybe took down their boundaries for whatever reason, had a lack of boundaries for whatever reason, because you wanted to keep the relationship together, you wanted to keep the family together, you wanted to keep the business together. Uranus coming into the seventh house is we can't have that anymore. We need you to operate completely free and what is authentically true for you and collect those relationships that will allow that freedom for you, right? So you want to ask yourself, what is the cost of having this person in my life versus my own personal freedom? And so Uranus kind of brings this learning dynamic here of like the expectations that others will have and you will have of others through the seventh house transit, right? What are you willing and not willing to do in the seventh house transit? And Uranus comes in and if there is a loss of meaning or a loss of inspiration or excitement, right, in the relationships that you have, then Uranus comes in and kind of brings that instability. But ultimately, it is here to bring you an upgrade with people who can resonate with you on your visions and your ideas and your expectations and what you need. So if you feel really critical of other people with Uranus transiting your seventh house, that's a good sign that why are you feeling so critical of other people? What is the expectation here, right? And are you freed up? Are your expectations too high, or are they too high of you? All these questions come up with these relationship dynamics that are really encouraging the individual to re-examine the terms for them on how relationships are built and why they happen. Right? It doesn't mean that all your significant relationships break up necessarily, but there's a required upgrade, right? A required upgrade of the circumstances and the expectations and the boundary setting. Uranus entering the eighth house, finishing up this cycle, is heavily about who you can trust first, because this is a house where you cover vulnerability and intimacy with life. So there will be this learning experience about uncovering your vulnerabilities here and your ability to trust other people, which really is your ability to trust yourself, right? So it will give you circumstances and situations that come up that will teach you learning lessons around your ability to be in a committed psychological, emotional, sexual, intimate dynamic with another individual and learn what that trust is, right? Free yourself up. So if we have behavior patterns or residual pains in this area of life when it comes to trust, Uranus transits come in through the eighth house and give us experiences that bring us into uncovering what those dynamics are on a deeper emotional and psychological level, right? So this breaking opening of this very vulnerable space within yourself that ultimately is going to teach you how to make decisions for yourself on who to trust and who not to trust, but also that's teaching you a deeper wisdom on your own ability to trust yourself and your own decisions when it comes to that, right? Not feeling fearful of intimacy because you have this deep inner inner trust within yourself, and that being vulnerable is okay and it is a safe space. So it's this freeing up of yourself, of allowing yourself to be vulnerable without losing yourself if a situation goes wrong, right? If there's a betrayal that happens. This can be an upgrade or a downgrade because Uranus transits are kind of unexpected, right? There's no real stable ground here. So there's upgrades and downgrades when it comes to, contracts with other people. Think people that you're merging money with, business associations that you can merge money with, marriage, joint marriage finances. You might suddenly get an inheritance, right? There can be our experiences with inheritances and psychological, emotional, and actual, death and renewal. We can get major insights when it comes to the truth, exposing the truth and how to tell the truth, maybe with you or maybe with another person. In some situations, I've had clients who have had the eighth house transit with Uranus, not to scare you, whatever, but issues with money, like large amounts of money, like money being stolen, Ponzi schemes, um, and the trust and the truth behind what somebody said they were going to do and what they didn't do, and uncovering these life lessons around money and vulnerability and the exposure of that and this intensity around that, right? So you're really learning with Uranus and the eighth house, who can you trust and who can't you trust? There is also this link to money and how you earn it and its connection with intimacy and sex and power. So you might be wrestling with the power of wealth and the power of money and learning lessons around those dynamics. Um, is there value in that? Maybe there was value in that. Maybe there isn't, right? Power over power under dynamics can come under this. Maybe you worked or trusted or was in partnership. Maybe you married somebody for money. And then all of a sudden that creates an instability within the merging of the union. Maybe you thought that they were putting money in your retirement fund this whole time and you sacrificed yourself for them. You've sacrificed your career for them, and then all of a sudden you come up and you realize that they were never putting money away in the first place for you, right? Just as an example that's coming up, right? So you're learning who to trust and who not to trust with Uranus coming in here. And then also you might have sudden flashes and insights around what you want in intimacy. So there could also be an upgrade with your psychic gifts and your intuition, which really makes you powerful on learning who you can trust and who you can't with sex, money, time, intimacy, personal matters, inheritances, the deeper stuff, the merging, right? Your psychic abilities, your ability to pick up on what really somebody means, what their intentions are. You can become very smart with this transit, highly acute with this transit. But it's also helping you zone in on your own psychological undercurrents here so that you can be freed up from anything that you might have attracted that would bring in these negative situations. When Uranus is leaving the eighth house, you've covered them, I'll tell you. You'll have covered them and free yourself up from them so that you can lead life psychologically and emotionally and mentally empowered because you've learned so much when it comes to these topics, these dynamics, right? You've experienced the extremes. But you also could uncover new ways of your own sexuality. So you could, they just might be eccentric to other people, or it might be eccentric to your partner. Maybe all of a sudden you're into going into sex clubs and your partner's like, what? Or maybe all of a sudden you decide that you want to, it doesn't have to be this extreme, right? But maybe all of a sudden you want to be a swinger, or maybe all of a sudden you want polygamy, or maybe all of a sudden you were polygamous and now you were like totally monogamous. There's a change. There could be a change here with what you're sexually orientated to, or maybe you were super hyper healthy sexual person, and then all of a sudden you're just cutting it out, right? You're just cutting it out of your life and you're like, I could just do without. It's about cutting out the noise and finding what's important and what's your own personal liberation and truth around these dynamics, because that's going to be healthy for you, right? And learning to trust yourself here and learning to tell the truth when it comes to these topics as well. To deep house. In the ninth house, Uranus moving to the ninth house. This is where we seek like a higher knowledge and higher truth. So if you've just experienced the eighth house Uranus transit, you're probably really happy for this ninth house transit. Um, so initially there could be a longing or a desire to explore broader, wider viewpoints in the world, like worldly, Ninth house is usually foreign travel, like we have to cross an ocean to get there, right? We have to go far lands. There could be this sudden need for you to explore a higher truth, right? A new perspective. And that could ask you to physically travel, but this could also just be mental travel too, right? Say you're not able to travel for whatever reason. This could also be a mental, philosophical type of travel for yourself. You could all of a sudden want to go back to school for a higher education. You might have been in school like for higher education. Maybe you're working on your doctorate and you completely are pivoting, right? And it's shocking to other people, but you're just completely like, you know what? Like, this isn't my perspective anymore. This doesn't feel alive. This doesn't feel original for me. I don't feel creative in this field. And you pivot into a totally different direction. Okay. It can look like to other people that you're rebelling, but you could just all of a sudden get this need and this sudden insight around a new truth and a new perspective for yourself. And it could challenge other people, because sometimes with Uranus transits, and especially in the ninth house, we can feel alienated for our belief, or alienated for expressing our truth or our opinion or our perspective or our philosophy, right? You could all of a sudden be switching your religious orientation with Uranus transiting the ninth house, right? And you shock people. I know somebody who was like new agey and then she completely went Christian when Uranus hit the ninth house last year. So your sudden personal truths can change and you can get sudden insights because of that, right? So there could be this itch for this longing to gain that new perspective and to follow that pursuit. You do want to be weary of your criticism towards other people's truth. So because the Uranus ninth house, like if you get that alienation or you feel that pushback, which can happen from other people because your truths, your perspectives, your cultural perspective maybe doesn't align with other people around you, you can get critical. Like, why don't people see things the way that I do, right? Why don't people believe this? Why can't people see this like I can see this, right? That can happen. And it's a good indication to just kind of bring it back to yourself and explore, where can you educate yourself more? Where can you explore more, learn more? That just reinforces what's healthy for you, because again, it's different for everybody, right? It's different. It can look like you're rebelling to other people, but really it's just really aligned with your own sense of self. This can also be like a shift in one's political orientation as well. I think that Politics can just be a stand-in for religion for some people. So your political, which might be happening for a lot of people given the nature of the United States right now, but some people might feel disillusioned all of a sudden by their political party or their beliefs or what they were doing and have a complete 180. I think like Tulsi Gabbard is like a good example of that. I don't actually know what her chart was, but I know that she was um Republican and then went Democratic, which shocked a lot of people. So you could feel uprooted also within your homeland and because you don't align for whatever reason, and then you want to move, right? You could move. But there's kind of uprooted type of feeling just because your whole perspective of things can shift and change, your philosophy, right? But it can also be very exciting, right? You can have these sudden insights. You can immerse yourself in new cultures and new beliefs, right? And just gain a whole bunch of more wisdom by seeking new perspectives. But it's important to remember to also cut out the noise here because the alienation part can happen as one's perspective of their vision for the world changes. They can start to feel alienated from other people around them for a little while until this individual drops himself into people who align with their new vision and perspective. Now, Uranus crossing the 10th house. This is a big one, right? This is the top of the chart, the MC, where you're publicly visible. Okay. So this is where suddenly you will feel who you were up until this point isn't working anymore, or at least layers of yourself. Let me take a sip. Layers of yourself just doesn't work. And because the 10th house is a lot to do with your responsibility and your reputation that everyone else sees you as, that becomes a shift, right? There's this internal sense you've been through Uranus and ninth house transits, your perspective and your vision and your philosophy and knowledge has gone under change. And now all of a sudden, your image out in the world changes, right? So this is a person who might experience career shifts, right? So your work image is a big one. People might see a big shift in how you present yourself in the professional setting. You might completely shift careers, to be honest. You might completely shift careers. You might decide that it's not for you anymore. You might step down from a position. You might get upgraded to a bigger position, right? There's some sort of shift when it comes to your reputation, your employment, and your responsibilities, right? You might go from full-time to part-time, or you might go from part-time to full-time. You might go from disabled, never working to, operating a multi-million-dollar company. Like, the waves of possibilities can change, but this is really about you seeing new visions and new possibilities for yourself, even if other people don't see it. And it most likely is the case that Uranus transiting the 10th house for people, um, they don't, other people don't see the opportunities that you see in something. So it's important to drown out the noise of that because your soul is ready for this upgrade, right? Maybe you're letting go of major responsibilities and you're going to travel the world, right? Um, so you begin to want to explore to be different, and that looks radically different to everybody else and how they perceive you, even though that it's more likely this has been working up for a long time. So it's not so much of a shocking experience for you at this point as it is to everybody else that's in your life and impacted by it, right? So also if you're ignoring the changes, then one might feel really restless at work, right? You may feel just like You might become unreliable at work, unreliable in your profession, unreliable that what you need to do for other people. You might feel this boredom, this restlessness, or this irritation, or even criticism, if you're ignoring the changes that Uranus in the 10th house wants you to bring. Uranus in the 11th house is mostly going to change your perspective for your long-term goals and the visions that you had, right? So this looks like a transit where somebody had this long-term vision their entire life, and then Uranus moves in and they just, if they just, I don't want it anymore. They're like, I just don't want it. And it's just a new one, and people are like, what? You've dedicated so much time to this goal, and people with Uranus in the 11th can be like, no, it's not for me anymore. It's connected to um that long range vision that you have for like what does freedom look like for you long term, right? I'm laughing because it's Uranus loves to be in the 11th house in general, right? So it's a liberating transit, but it's a big one because people's life work can change with this transit sometimes, right? Their life work or their lifelong groups and communities that they were associated with, their friend groups can change, right? This is the house where your social alliances are. Your social alliances land your tribe, right? Not like family emotional tribe, like your tribe with your friends, your communities, and the people that you're connected with who believe in the same future and vision that you have. This can begin to change, right? Either this becomes an internal process with you where you don't feel like you align with these people anymore. Like a group or whatever. Maybe first weirdest things are coming to my mind in this video today, but maybe you were a scientist. Like, where are these coming from? Maybe you were a scientist who was working in a lab and you were cloning people, and all of it, and like the vision for the future of this group that you were with is like cloning people and cloning things, and it's going to be amazing. And then all of a sudden you're like, no, this is not good. You just, maybe you spent 50 years doing this, and then all of a sudden you're like, I can't do it. You know, um, Life's work, right, can change under Uranus in the 11th house. But really, it's going to be an emotional and a mental connection to the people that you're associated with those long-term visions and goals, right? So the communities and these networks and your associates begin to change, or you change so much, right? Rather than your outcasting yourself, sometimes you change so much that the group kind of forces you out for whatever reason, right? They look at you as like the rebellious one, the alienated one, and you don't fit in anymore with them too. That can also come into, or your ideas are too radical for the group, and then you all of a sudden feel ostracized from the group, and it can be a painful experience. Like, I do have to, to say that, but ultimately, because this is freeing you up from something that is limiting your potential and limiting your stagnation or your growth, your values can heavily be affected to this house. So it's often that there's a shift in your values that are shifting your alignment with that long-term vision and your vision for what the world in the future and your life should look like. And so that becomes a reflection with the associations that you're involved with. Can also be online related too. Just want to, all those themes can apply to like online groups, associations as well. And then we go into the 12th house. So Uranus moving into the 12th house. This is a spiritual house, right? This is a house where a planet moving in here does ask you to relax. And I know that's probably hard to say for Uranus moving through this house, but Uranus wants you to be free enough and feel free enough that you can trust in your ability in life to relax and to release control, right? This is about freeing up an area of your life where you feel like you've been clinging on, trying to control things. Uranus moving through the 12th house requires a person to learn how to surrender so that they can open up, right? And this opening up, this freedom and this opening up will help the individual feel connected to the everything else in the universe, right? Everything else. So at times things can feel a little bit out of control and chaotic the more that you're trying to not let change happen, right? So Uranus is asking you, are you free? And can you feel like you can relax into trusting the universe, something higher than yourself, something outside of yourself? Maybe it's God, maybe it's one, maybe it's your higher self, maybe it's universal power, right? It's just your ability to trust in nature and the universal womb and your ability to relax and let go of the outcomes for things, okay? This is also an excellent transit to open you up to intuitive living, opening you up to dreams, connections to the other side, psychic abilities, right? We all have psychic abilities, but on heightened awareness here, right? Things coming through the senses that you can't explain, right? Um, Now, if the person is resisting it, sometimes it can feel like weird things are happening to them that scares them. That scares them. So it's like darker versions, darker images, right? Nightmares, shadow images, shadow things, right? Things falling off, breaking and out of nowhere because the universe is trying to ask to speak through to you for you to let go, to open up your mind, to relax, to open up to universal wisdom and let those insights and those downloads come through, whether it's through meditation, lots of naps, your dreams at night, sound baths, being in nature, walking in nature, right? There's an asking here for your, this is a very spiritual transit to surrender to the openness and what those insights can bring because they will bring you more freedom overall in the other areas of your life. But we need to let go of control here. We need to let go of control. Sometimes these sudden shifts and this intuition can make somebody feel kind of high on life because there's an acceleration process that happens with Uranus. And it can be an acceleration process through, the spiritual mind, through the crown chakra, and it can make somebody kind of feel so elevated, almost high like, right? And so there's a need to ground yourself here, right? Get a spiritual coach, for instance, learn meditation, get into sound baths, get into yoga, allow yourself naps, don't try to control situations, right? For this period of time. A little bit more openness for rest, for renewal. Because also remember, the 12th house is a solitude house. And Uranus transits ask us to cut out the noise and give us a little bit of time for solitude, right? So, to wrap that up too, you might get flashes of knowledge that are like totally not logical. They're coming from something higher than yourself. So, again, these universal things, it's good to like journal and to write it down because you might have these spiritual insights that are really important. And when Uranus crosses that ascendant, imagine the power that that can bring to the new direction of your life, when you're ready to embody a new version of yourself, right? Because the 12th house is also this letting go house, this clearing out house. So Uranus is asking you to just relax, to trust, to let this stuff clear out that's happening. So my dog is asking to be gone out, so I've definitely got to bring him out at this point in time. If you have stayed with me until the end, please make sure that you give me a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. I am trying to make my channel grow. Check out my free horoscopes right now. It's free for only a little while. If you're a new member, it'll be free for you for a little bit. Check those out. It's 10 minutes of a daily horoscope. delivered to your email. And make sure you sign up for my newsletter if you are interested in this course that I am launching. It will be affordable. It will be life-changing. I I bring change. And if you are interested in booking a reading with me, you can do that through my website. I will attach the link below. Let me know what you enjoyed about this video. Let me know what kind of content you would like more of as I continue to grow. And let me know how Uranus has been showing up for you right now. I'd love to hear your stories, your insights, what's going on for you. I'm excited for this new this shift. I'm excited for Uranus to leave my eighth house. So with that being said, appreciate you all. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll be back with you very soon.